Good evening and welcome to the first event of the Romanian Heritage Season, which tonight is themed around neglect. I'm Stephen McGrath and I'll be moderating the event this evening. I'm a British journalist based in Romania with a keen interest in local architectural heritage, and I've written in the past about two of the participants' projects this evening for the BBC and various others. This series of weekly events, all in March, is a partnership between UK Romania Group and the Romanian Cultural Institute in London. It aims to examine the challenges of cultural heritage and conservation and preservation in Romania through the lens of three distinct cultural resources. Tonight, we're focusing on neglect, looking at the challenges in protecting and rehabilitating the country's built heritage. Next week on Wednesday, we continue with exploitation, a study of the threats to Romania's wilderness and the efforts to prevent or reverse the destruction. The following week, we'll close with Erasure, which is a reflection on Romania's vanishing Jewish history. Anybody watching who would like to ask questions, please write them in the comment box and we will address them later in this talk. Over to you now, Wana, if you can introduce your project and tell us a little bit about what you do and how it started.
Sure, thank you, Stephen. First of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this event and to be in such a great company tonight. Our project, it's called Herculane Project, and it's focused on one of the most beautiful spa resorts in Europe, or it used to be one of the most beautiful spa resorts in Europe. Now it's abandoned and degraded. It's called Herculane Baths. And our project is essentially, it's trying to reactivate from an architectural point of view and also social point of view, the historical city center of Herculane. Basically, what we are trying to do, it's focused on two main components and it has a holistic approach. We are trying not only to have interventions on the monuments themselves, but also on the community level. And we are trying to bring the community closer to the heritage and try to reconnect them in order to create a sustainable development for the future. And right now, our main focus is on the Neptune Baths, which is a Class A monument, a former spa resort that it's abandoned, and we are trying to save it. And it's, let's say, a journey that it's taking the course of a 4-year struggle, and it's very interesting to see how the civic society joined us, and it's actually become their project, not ours. So that's all about us, and perhaps we discuss later.
Okay. And over to you, Nikolai, if you can introduce your Pro Patrimonio project, which is the longest running of them all, and tell us a little bit about how that came about and what you're doing.
I'm sorry, I'll start again. I realized I hadn't unmuted myself. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you to ICR and UK Romanian Group for organizing this and getting Stephen McGrath to look after us and keep us in order. Pro Patrimonio was started back in 2000 with Herculane Project and my brother Indra and myself. Based really on the UK National Trust, because we were all living in the UK at the time. And like the UK National Trust, which is, as English people know, is enormous. I mean, they're the largest landowner now in the UK. Started with nothing, just a few buildings at the turn of the century, at the turn of the last century. So Pro Patrimonio, we hope that in 100 years we'll be in a similar position. One has to be patient. Pro Patrimonio is about the whole idea of it is about restoring pride in not only in old buildings, restoring buildings and bringing them back into life and sort of getting them back into the community. It's also about restoring national pride in Romania, which certainly back in 2000 was sorely lacking, and is beginning to grow. The people people get a better sense of Romania's history, about what a rich history it was, and also you only have to look at parts of Bucharest, villas in the countryside, churches, Conac, and so on, to know what an extraordinary past Romania has, and that is what all of us here are now trying to bring back to life. The first building that we got working on was actually, well, there was two at the same time. One was a Saxon house in Biskri, but the first one was a villa up in Cumpulum Muscel, which if David or whoever the operator is, yeah, this is it here. It's a beautiful building, which was the two old ladies, Gălescu sisters, left to Pro Patrimonio, and it was in pretty terrible state, but had a lot of old furniture and books and so on from the family. And so as you can see, we restored it totally, and took a long time, and raising money sort of hand to mouth to get it going. And now it operates. Călescu. It has 5 bedrooms and can sleep about 12 people. And we rent it out now. But at the same time, we've also done a lot there, because Patrimonio is also about teaching the restoration of building, restoration of furniture, restoration of books, the collection, fabrics, the horticulture for the park, which you can see behind, which was put together by the father of the two Gălescu ladies. And when people can stay there, we put together, working with the National Trust, we actually, Pro Patrimonio, we now have a reciprocal arrangement with them, agreement, whereby if you're a member of Pro Patrimonio, Romania, you can actually go and visit as a member all National Trust buildings in the UK, and vice versa, which is really something rather special. Biskri, which is another building that we did, which is in an old Saxon farmhouse, this one, which really was derelict when we took it on, and we restored it and bought furniture and found furniture, sourced old furniture to style, and again that now is also can be rented, and in fact has become more and more popular as Biskri has become more and more popular. Following that, there's another one is the Neamțu Manor, which you can see. I think there are 2 slides here, but here you can, this is part of getting these buildings into the community and making the whole community identify with the building by organizing concerts and children's groups. If you go on to the next slide, I think you'll see, yes, we had volunteers learning how to put a mosaic back together, and people, as you can see, worked on the roof. It's a rather extraordinary checkerboard kind of roof we have there. But again, it's local education, the local community. And also, next one is the wooden churches, which we've done. There's 60 wooden churches in the program. That's a program that's been going on for about 7 or 8 years now, and we've done 15 of the churches. And they're these small wooden churches in Oltenia, which have the most incredible wooden paintings on wood inside and outside. And many of whom, as Eugène was talking about, had no roofs, the rain was coming in, and everything was just deteriorating. So that's a long-going thing. We have help with the World Monument Fund on that. But there's a lot to go, and it's still. But again, what's nice there is that the local community have also become a lot involved. Not in every community, has to be said, but some, the priests are helpful, some not so helpful. But generally, the public get very interested, because again, in these we have organised concerts and getting the locals to come and work on the properties. And I think we have one last slide, which is the Georgianescu house in Mihailene, again, which was a wreck when it was identified, and that has now been totally restored and is now is part of a music and, I think on the next slide, music and arts school, where which we're working with the Children's Academy for Music and Education, which started in 2020. It was 2 years restoring it. And it and the Nyamsumana, they both have this the same group or same organization of getting the local children in. I think in Escu House there was some 44 children, local community, who came in to learn music and learn creative work around the in the building and around the building, and with concerts and so on. So, I mean, that's a sort of snapshot of what Pro Patrimonio is up to. Just one missing thing that I hadn't mentioned, which is a large part of also Pro Patrimonio is mission is in lobbying. For instance, we were very much involved with the Roșia Montana fight to get that, to get the that mine blocked. And in fact, it was we who took them to court, and I think we considered ourselves to be pretty instrumental in sparking it. But then it was actually the people in the street who actually made the change and really stopped it. So that was, but we were proud of our effort in that. So anyway, that's enough from me. I've talked a lot. Okay.
One thing that stands out to me is you've talked about the role of civic society. And I saw in one of your slides that UiPath, which is a massive Romanian tech company, you also talked about useful priests, but I've not heard anything yet. Obviously, these are civic projects. What role are the state playing to help your projects? And start with you, Wana.
The obvious answer. But no, I feel like it depends on the project's objectives. In our case, we are working on a site that has many legal issues, and we are working on a site that was abandoned for more than 30 years. So this indifference and this lack of interest in sustainable development also of the heritage object is actually what we are fighting, and the state, unfortunately, doesn't help very much. But it's a good thing that it doesn't get in your way, because in this case, we are actually succeeding in doing some work there. But yeah, the state doesn't get involved very much. Only when it's a very public situation that can hurt them, unfortunately, in our case.
Mm-hmm. I just want to remind the audience that you can ask questions on Facebook, leave them in the comments, and they will be addressed a little bit later. For now, if you can tell us your experience, Eugen, of working with the state, maybe touching on bureaucracy, what has that been like? We're all on mute this evening, unfortunately. I'll ask. There we go.
Yes, I'm unmuted now, I hope. So we were a little bit more lucky with the collaboration with the state. Of course, it depends what the state means, because if we speak about the central government, there is not really much support coming from there, because they are a big corpus, and it's a big bureaucracy until you get the support, because you usually need it immediately. So there's not much financial support, except in 1 or 2 programs which the Institute of Heritage has launched last year for endangered monuments, which is quite a nice project and really community-based and, let's say, working on the grassroots. But except in that, there's not really much going on for now. But we have a good involvement of the regional and local authorities, which are part of our project. And here I think the success of our project is also because we managed to get a very sensitive balance and maybe an adequate balance between the contribution of each of the 4 actors, which should safeguard heritage. So the community is giving us food and providing accommodation. The local and regional administration are paying the materials we need. which is much easier for them as doing other things. We are doing the documentation and the labor work with the students and with the volunteers and with craftsmen. And there is also, so the experts which are involved, all the 4 actors are here involved. And because there is a very good balanced contribution of each of them, we managed to be successful in quite, I think there are more than 50 monuments which we could say for now in the last 4 years. So I think that the state wants to support. They don't have the capacity because of higher bureaucracy. They want to support somehow, but it's very complicated. I have worked for 1 year in the central government, and I saw how complicated things are if you want to support someone. So for now, you need to change a lot of laws according to so you can support the local NGOs and the local communities. But we are going on. We are trying to do education program also for the people who are working in the government, because they have there's a cut of their experience on the site. They don't really know what the problems on the site are, on the grassroots. And I think from here, many of the problems are coming us actually from this part.
One of the other things I'll ask you, Nikolai, how have you found it? I know you said that you've trained some craftsmen since you launched, but how do you find, on a per project basis, finding competent workmen or craftsmen to undertake, these kind of restoration projects? Is that a struggle?
Well, we've been working with the French group, the Compagnon d'Honneur, Compagnon de Devoir, who come out as experts, if you like, and have taught on some of our building sites, stonework, stonemasonry, metal working, and wood carving and embroidery as well. So that's been very helpful, and that's been sort of a free, if you like, assistance, and they have been able to train the people, the volunteers that we have, because we rely, I think all of us do, we rely on volunteers to do the legwork, but people are very ready and enthusiastic to learn a skill, and some of them, I think, carry on afterwards, and from the volunteering, they actually learn to love that particular skill and craft, and so it works extremely well. And some of the people we've had working, for instance, on restoring the frescoes in the wooden churches, they start off as amateurs, but they end up as real experts. And the same with the building, different building works, and learning how to build. The experience was of Herculane House, because it was all there were local specialists who knew how to rebuild a wall in the old style, and then the volunteers would pick it up, and then they'd all get at it and so on. And of course, our main team in Bucharest, they're all architects anyway, so they know a lot of what they want, what they need, and also have access to skills. We did a long time back, about 10 years ago, so we actually put together a dictionary of craftsmen throughout Romania of all different skills, so that which was then published. But it's such a long time ago now. I'm sure we still have a few copies, but it was in sort of diary form. But no, it's people enjoy doing it.
And I'm going to go back to Eugen on this one because it's something that he suggested could be a good question. What should be the top 3 priorities for safeguarding the cultural heritage, in your view?
Well, this question came among our discussion from last evening, and I think we should start putting things on the table right as they are. We have, for me, for us actually, the biggest problem is, which is damaging quite enormously heritage, is actually the lack of law for structural interventions, which we are working now in Romania on a law for civil engineering. So any monument is just seen or treated as a new building, and you cannot be so rude to a monument. You cannot just put concrete everywhere in it, because it's not reversible. It's not you're harming the authenticity of a building, and we need to put up this law. There are discussions with the Institute for Heritage, which they have done a draft of this law, which needs to be improved a little bit, and they are looking for solutions. And I hope that in a few, maybe in 1 or 2 years, this will come out. So the problem is that we are still destroying monuments with these concrete interventions, which are not reversible and which are degrading themselves. Concrete has just a lifetime, so metal concrete has just a lifetime of 50 years. And what do we do after that? So this is the first issue we should do. And a second one is to get also a law for recycled materials. We cannot use on monuments, if part of a wall is collapsing and you need to put the stones back, you need a quality certification, you need a bill, you need a guarantee for that products, and which you don't find. So there are a lot of stones, bricks, tiles, maybe wood, which is just stays in the courtyard of people, and you can reuse them. But we don't have this law which permits to reuse this. This is what I'm insisting very much. We are confronted at each intervention with these things. And a third thing would be, it's not necessarily the funding, because we are always complaining about funding, but I think that there's quite a lot of funding. It's just the way of how you use these funds. Definitely on European funds is not the best way until now, which money have been spent on, because it was quite a brutal revamp of and destruction of monuments in 80-90% of the cases. So it's just the training issue. This is very important for craftsmen and experts, because there are many projects which they have funding and you don't find a company which should help you. Even if they are paid quite with a lot of money, because they are just a few, and it's quite a specific work. It's very, you need the right expertise, and companies are just running away from these projects. So I have discussion with many mayors which are asking me to suggest a company. They don't find anyone. They have opened the auctions for a few months or a few years, and no one was coming to take this. So we need to train these craftsmen, and to give them also a certification. There's a law of craftsmen, but it's very weak. We should support craftsmen in doing the entrepreneurship, in getting the certification for their products, because at the beginning it's very difficult for themselves to invest in these certifications. So we need to maybe to get less taxes for the state at the first stage for these craftsmen. And of course, definitely we should train them. Maybe museums should have a big role here. And what I would do now is to identify all the craftsmen for all the companies which are working in this field, and do an educational program for training for them. So I think these three things, there are many more, of course, but we should resume to a few.
Is there a risk, though, that I've heard of some cases, I think it was in Biskri, where there were a series of craftsmen who were trained, and then once they were trained, they left to go and work abroad, because obviously there were higher salaries and, you know, higher migration levels, and is that a risk?
No, that's an old story, actually. That was 10-12 years ago, and it was a flagship project of the Mihai Eminescu Trust at that time. And yes, at that time, not many craftsmen. So they knew how to restore properly homes, but their homes they did with industrial materials. It's a problem of fashion. It's a problem of status, of social status, rather than in understanding how things work. And even if a craftsman that time wanted to restore his house properly, and he wanted to do it, he would have been excluded by the community if he wouldn't take over the whole behavior. And it's bounds are very tight between members of the community, and you cannot be an exception in a community, otherwise you're excluded. I can understand these people, but nowadays I think that many of the craftsmen are actually, they have a job. We have also launched with the Order of Architects a map of craftsmen. We have over 700 craftsmen there, and when you call someone, he will tell you that he has a lot of work to do for this year. He cannot help you. This is mainly our experience, because craftsmen are not working abroad anymore. They are more aware about their roots, about their language, about their friends, about their families, and they can win, they can earn in Romania maybe 60-70% of what they should earn nowadays in Germany or Italy, and they are not, they don't accept for the small difference to work abroad anymore. Many of them. Our craftsman, which is a tile maker, he gave up working in Hungary. He's just working here because he earns some money and he can stay with his family. Many of the craftsmen, that's interesting, they want also to get to holiday nowadays. So it's a lot of things going on. So they are more aware about the value of their own life. So yes, we need to gather these people and to train them, because there is a lot of work to do.
And how have you found it, Juana, seeking workers in Bailey Herculane? Have you used local builders and craftsmen, or, I mean, it wouldn't be craftsmen at this stage with the kind of interventions that you've done, but how have you found seeking workers?
Yeah, we had also the same problem because we tried to find some companies, for example, to join our project, and also volunteers, craftsmen, and the process was really hard and long, because I feel like for 6 months we searched a company to come and join our project and do the work that we wanted to execute there. So it was just like a bit of a luck, because we were, I don't know, like a famous spa resort, and we were very young, and those guys, the company owners, said, okay, you're very nice and we want to help you, but otherwise I feel like we would have gone forever in that process. And this is indeed a big issue, but what I would like to also emphasize, it's the lack of support that heritage owners, like owners of heritage objects, have in Romania. I feel like for us in Herculane, many people are contacting us and they're trying to get help, because what can we do with this type of monument? What papers do we need for the permits to construct? If it's a Class B monument, can we demolish it? We get these questions very, very often. And I feel like besides the educational process, I feel like we should also try and give them a little bit more support in order to perhaps have proper interventions on their objects. And also, like, if I can go back a little bit on those 3 priorities that Eugen talked about, I feel like in the case of legislation, we also need like a legislation that it permits you to access funding and intervene on objects that have legal issues, because many of heritage houses, or in our case big spa resorts, are trapped in these legal issues problem or trauma from the past, and we cannot access proper funding. We cannot properly, let's say, promote the project because of that. And perhaps maybe this is an idea for the future, for the legislation in Romania in regard of heritage safeguarding.
If I could add something on that legislation, which is following on from what Eugen said, is that what is sorely lacking in Romania is a change to tax law, which in the early stages of the National Trust in the UK made all the difference. And this was that owners of heritage buildings, if they invested money into the restoration of the building, they were allowed to, receive tax relief on the money that they spent on the buildings that they were restoring. It has to be what in England they call listed buildings or protected building, heritage building. But effectively, that gives you state aid. It is state aid because it's a tax relief. So it kind of takes the burden off the government actually having to do anything, which because they're not in a hurry to do it because they say they have no money for these kind of things, which is largely true, unfortunately. But this way, it would make a huge difference, I think, for situations that Eugène is facing, that Taiwan is facing, and West is facing in Pro Patrimonio. We have the same thing. We have a lot of people contacting us because they know we're a group of architects. I'm not an architect myself, but the team is, and asking exactly how, help us. Can you do a project for us? Can you help us raise money for it? And so sometimes we put something together for them. Sometimes we can't. It's too big. It's too enormous. One other thing which needs fixing is a stricter control, I believe, on development in the cities, because so many buildings have been destroyed. Very often, just owners abandon them, or people even buy them to abandon building to then just let them disappear, just fall down, and then be able to build something, and that the control of that is very poor, and it's shocking that some of the buildings that have been lost around Romania, and that is a major problem. But how one fixes that, I'm not sure. I think that's you just need louder voices in the NGO community, probably, to point the finger when it's happening.
Well, I want to give you good news that about financial support, even if it's on historical buildings which are not listed, so mainly houses. There is already an application which the Ministry for Agriculture applied for the rural parts of Romania, which still have this high cultural value, where the houses have higher cultural value. There is a program now which they applied on PNRR. In Romania, it's called Program Național de Reziliență și Redresare și Reziliență, exact. So there's a 20 million euro project which they applied for 600 houses to be supported financially for its conservation and restoration. And we felt that we need to do this because we face the same problem. People are just asking, what is the state helping with? They're just putting rules everywhere. The bureaucracy is very high to make documentation for restoring a building. And where is the support for this? And now suddenly I have a hope that it's happening. It got to another stage now. And we are also training these owners of the buildings, because we identify there's not many craftsmen, and all the owners of the buildings, which will get this 25,000 euro as a grant, will go through a two-week workshop on restoration, on both practical and theoretical issues about restoration. So we are doing education through the government. I hope it will come up for this year. So there is a little bit of hope. Unfortunately for monuments, yes, there is not much now to do excepting the programs of the Institute for Heritage, which have very low funding for now.
And is that the kind of project that should be rolled out, or expanded on, or at least be a sort of consistent project, not an isolated year where the state kind of allocate, here's funds to do 600 houses, And I think this brings us to talking about state subsidies, what Nikolai touched on earlier. The topic of, which is something that, you know, me personally, Eugen and Nikolai at least have a lot of personal connection to, is the Transylvanian Saxon villages that we've talked about, with the fortified churches and the surrounding rural architecture, which, I mean, you know, there's so many houses and these smaller, you know, not class A monuments, not class B monuments, that are being defaced or, you know, aggressively renovated. Like how can that be prevented? Is education a big part of that?
Well, if it's me you're expecting a reply from, we have done quite a lot of projects in the Saxon villages, and of course also Pro Patrimonio has done very nice to restore their house in Viskri, and it's quite a model for many owners of historical buildings. I think the Saxon area faces a special problem, which is it's a region with high social problems, because the Saxons, they left, and then we have maybe half of the people who are living in the villages have this social, let's say, difficulties. And it's difficult when we say in Romanian that with an empty stomach, you cannot really think. So there's not just education, of course, there's a very low financial power of these people, and they do whatever they can to put the cover on their roof, to put an iron sheet or a plastic windows, which is cheaper. Even if sometimes it's also because of social status and fashion, but the main problem is that people don't know that an old house can at the end look very nice, and it can be very comfortable to live in. We can adapt these houses to a modern lifestyle and modern needs, and they don't know how to do this, and they cannot imagine this is possible, and that's why they are trying to transform these old houses into some villas or into modern houses in a wrong way. They simply don't work. Industrial materials don't work on this traditional houses. They are actually degrading them. So, but as soon as the community or more members of leaders of the community will shift the paradigm, all the community would suddenly follow them. And yes, we are working in many villages with leaders, opinion leaders, and we had some success in a few villages. Like many others, there are also other organizations who are working in the Saxon area. So there is a possibility, but you need to work not to see it as if you restore a house of a poor family, no one in the village will follow this model. They will say, oh, the blue house is for poor people. So, but if you work with opinion leaders, with wealthy people who you can make aware of the value of heritage, then you will win this war. And a second very important issue not to neglect is that many young people from the towns are buying these days houses in the Saxon area and all over Romania, in very remote villages where traditional architecture is still available to be bought, and they are moving there. They are transforming their house in a nice way, adapting it, restoring it nicely. And when you have, I think, a limit of 5-6 new owners in a village, they can shift the attitude and the make awareness raising in the communities. And in 1-2 years,
I'll just interject here, Eugen. Do you feel that happened in Viskri, or is it just a string of foreigners and wealthy people who were able to finance these projects? Because
no,
I mean,
Viskri.
from go on, Nikolai.
Yeah, it's in Viskri because we've been involved with it quite a long, 16 years or something. It started really with the mayor, Herculane Project, who was she was a Saxon, is a Saxon, and was very proud of how the village sort of was anyway. But it was very poor. There was hardly any houses that had been restored. The Eminescu Trust started, and we came along, and other people came. So that's an example of where just if a few people start doing it, as Eugene was saying, and then more come, and then other people get ashamed to destroy, as in to build one of these beautiful old Saxon houses in, with thermopane windows, or paint the roof yellow or something. They don't do it anymore. Yeah. Because people sort of point them out because they're destroying the village, and it starts. It's like a snowball in each village, but you need the beginning core, and I think it is happening more. And I mean, it's great that what Eugene was saying, that so many of the younger generation are now buying houses out in the villages, and as holiday homes, or always to live, both, or remote working, and all that. I don't know how the internet speed is in some of these villages, but I dare say it'll get there, and it will make a big difference. Okay. So I think there's a lot of hope in that.
Okay, I'm going to bring Juana back in now. Sorry if you felt a little bit excluded there, because Eugene and Nikolai both have projects in Saxon Transylvania.
No, it's a recurring problem. We also have this in the Banat region or in Herculane spa resorts. It's a mentality issue.
Mm-hmm. One of the viewers has asked about the sort of demographics of donations. I know your project relies heavily on text message donations, Juana. If you could tell us a little bit about the demographic behind that.
For sure. And not only text messages, also donations online and on various widgets that help us see this type of demographics. So basically, in our project's case, we have lots of donors that are female donors, which is very interesting. And most of them come from Timișoara, Cluj-Napoca, and Bucharest area. So basically from the big cities, but we also, and this is very interesting, we also have many contributions from abroad. So basically people who left Romania and that are contributing in some ways in heritage salvation or restoration projects. And for us, this became like a very important issue in our project strategy, because we are trying to develop our campaigns or our projects targeted on these demographics that we have so far. So I feel like in the context of heritage preservation, we also have to become much more visible on social media and on every social media tool that we can, because these generations and also the younger generations are very high up to speed with what's going on in the world, and we have to catch up something with them, and this is why we try to get in touch as much as we can with people that make our community grow.
Back onto the demographics, in our pre-meeting yesterday, Eugene, you also talked about some of the demographic that you encounter with your volunteers. Can you explain a little bit about what you find there?
Yeah, well, the conclusion actually was that Juana said that many of the donors, 90% are women, and I think Nikolai said that their team is maybe 90% of the experts are women, and I can say that 90% of our volunteers almost are also female. So you can understand who is saving. Actually, you can understand what role women have in saving heritage. So we own them quite a lot.
Why is this, do you think?
I think they are more open to careful, and well, they are the barrier of traditions in any communities, and yes, they kept our traditions alive for many decades, and they are more interested also to learn and to do volunteering, because for them it's seen that it's rather interesting for their career to learn, quite a long process, and to learn more and more, to be more involved. As for boys or for men, as soon as they get out from the university, they want to earn some money, and this is their first priority. So they get to work to earn some, because they want to buy, and to, you know, for maybe for a man it's a little bit more not difficult, but he seems to have this role. He seems more that his way of earning something is more important at this in his life period of young ages, of course. And what I wanted to actually say something else, but I forgot now. So maybe Juana wants to fill in
something. Yeah, I feel like also for our project case, we are a project that it's 90% made of women, and our volunteers are young women. And I feel like we connect better with the community members and with, you know, in general, with the community and the society through these women, because they're more careful, caring, and generous. And this generosity has a very big power in the term of, you know, heritage preservation, or also education, and how we preserve our values, basically, not only just some buildings that are old and listed as monuments.
There is a guy who's is called Graham Bell. He said an interesting thing, that the environment where heritage lives is communication, and here definitely women are more skilled and more easy to communicate with the community. Sorry, Nikolai, if I interrupted.
Not at all. No, I was just going to say that certainly for the first at least 15 years of Pro Patrimonio, I think we raised in Romania probably about, you know, one leu for every 100 that we raised outside. We really raised money because we have Pro Patrimonio UK and Pro Patrimonio France. And we've raised money, you know, in those UK and France, you know, with concerts, exhibitions, etc. All of those years, and membership as well, because we also exist on the basis of membership fees, and the members are always far more in the UK. In the UK, we had, I think nowadays we have about 350, 400 members. In France, about 300. In Romania, it's still only about, it's less than 100, I think, after all these years, and which is, you know, probably our fault. We're obviously not doing it right in terms of how to get people to be members. But I think it's growing, and also what is growing in Romania now is that, and I said it was for the first 15 years. For the last more or less 5 years, we've now actually started succeeding in raising money in Romania, also with things like concerts and exhibitions, and we have honest goods that we make, which we sell, but also membership has increased, and corporate sponsorship has appeared finally in Romania in these last 5 or so years. Before, nobody really bothered, but now people do seem to think that there's you know, a nice idea to be associated with an NGO which is restoring beautiful buildings and bringing them back to life. And if, you know, some companies identify themselves with a particular building, a particular project, I think, you know, that is beginning to work now, and which is good. So I'm hopeful for the future, but it's a long slog.
That's something that you touched on yesterday as well, Eugen, was the role that, you know, maybe some of these modern tech companies, which is quite a vibrant scene now in Romania, could potentially play in rescuing heritage. And do you think that maybe the government could create some, like Nikolai said earlier, some tax incentives for these companies?
For the companies, yes. Unfortunately, the tax which an owner of a monument is paying to the state is quite low. So I think there's a little bit more help which he should be supported. But definitely the the companies which are paying this, but it's difficult to make just a law for taxpayers in heritage, because they have this CSR, social how it's called, the social corporate, the social corporates, yes, funding, which they anyway the state is deducting these taxes, and they usually create their own foundations so they can shift the money wherever they have passion on. And of course, some of them, they are giving it to heritage, some of them are giving for social issues, some of them are giving for medical issues, and we cannot do just alone on heritage. But what is important, I think, at this moment is to identify this businessmen, Romanian businessmen, who want to contribute and to help and to support the reconstruction of Romania, and they're quite aware of their role and they want to be involved. It's just a matter of identifying them and including them in the project, more than just getting some funds from there. I think in any big NGO, there should be quite a few of businessmen who are sensitive to heritage and who have their own ideas. And of course, they should be guided by maybe a council member. But they also should be involved in the decision of which monument to restore, suggesting maybe a company and so on. Because this, if you don't feel that if you don't make like Juana said, if you don't make people to feel that it's their project, you will be less successful. And this is what we all three organizations are doing. We transfer this self-esteem on each of the members and each of the partners and each of the volunteers, which they feel is their project. So this is what we should do with the entrepreneurs in Romania. We have quite put up a list of possible businessmen, Romanian business who would be interested about this. Of course, not everyone is interested about heritage, but there are quite a few. And we want at some point also to create just a foundation of their own, and we just should support them with advice. So I think these projects, they are happening all over all over the world, where businessmen are gathering, getting together to save heritage or to do a medical center or so on, and to get involved. And of course, they need an advisory body, which could be the experts of the NGO.
Okay. I'm going to bring in a question now from one of the audience, from Dragos Mihai Nutsa. How can citizens and NGOs lobby to overcome the political corruption that favors real estate agents' interests and leads to the destruction of urban heritage? And how can citizens bring those responsible to justice? I'll start with you, Nikolai. Perhaps you touched earlier on the heritage in the cities and more urban environments.
So it's how can the general public assist is the question. Yeah?
How can citizens, what role can citizens play in bringing those who destroy heritage to justice? Yeah,
I think that one way is that in a town like city like Bucharest is lobbying and making protest whenever anything is visible is happening, something is being torn down, or that you hear that it's going to be torn down, that there should be a protest that local people put together, and they can do it. They can hook into us as NGOs to help them, to help them do it, help them make a lobby, and in all cities. As to how you bring them to justice, I mean, that really is that's a very difficult one, because I think anybody who had experience of Romanian law knows how long it takes to get anything done, and there's all sorts of tricks that people can play to just prolong the agony until you almost give up. But we shouldn't give up. But it's about awareness, really, and if there was more press coverage on these sort of situations, I think that would help and make people more aware of what they're losing. It's a question. I think it's really a question of raising awareness amongst people, amongst friends, neighbours of it, so that less less disasters and destruction occur.
What are your thoughts on that topic, Warner? Do you have any thoughts on that topic? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I feel like if you give the power to the community and make them feel like these heritage objects, buildings become their own, I feel like then they will become also important, for example, for politicians, because a politician needs the support of a community to get another mandate. So I feel like what we should do is to better communicate and to become like more aware of the social tools and social media tools that we have around us, and try to make also heritage preservation something cool. I don't know if this is the right word to use, but we have to make it like a trend, and we have to involve as much as we can this type of new generation and new generation activities, tools to try and connect people with these buildings, because otherwise I feel like they're gonna just degrade more and more and perhaps never be restored. And also to enlighten perhaps the economic benefits that perhaps in the future someone who restores or saves a heritage building will have. Also the state's benefits, because the state will also have some benefits.
Mm-hmm. And you, Eugen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that we should play, we will be more successful if we play on the other side of the barrier, not always being against, or also, of course, we should play both roles as protesters, but also as members in decision-making bodies. And I think here we need to fight to get into, for example, to do some suggestions for the Commission for the Monuments, which should be a decision of the professional organizations of the civil society and of professionals, of course. So for now, it's just a decision of some people from the ministry, which don't know who these people are from the commissions. And unfortunately, it's rather a political decision. So we need to put pressure on the political decision maker to keep hands away from the commissions for monuments, from other decision maker in heritage, because it's not just about monuments falling down by themselves. It's also about being helped to fall down, and sometimes with the permits of the Commission for Monuments. And the big role is now, and the big problem is in the urban centers, which are under high pressure of businessmen who want to do something inadequate and to destroy some things to have a profit. And here we are losing almost each day the fight, because we have not done any suggestions about these members of the commissions. So I think here we should play. We should get more experts into elaborating policies in heritage. The ministry would be open in this case. I was discussing with high representatives, which asked me to do some laws, because they asked me if I have a lawyer to do some laws, because they don't really know how to do it. So they are open at some point. So we need to identify all these niches to support the state whenever they fail or they don't have the expertise. We should identify these things. And I think here, in naming the members of the commission, they don't have really an expertise, and we should do this. We should fight to get into these bodies. Yeah.
Okay. Right, we're going to wrap it up now, the first edition of the Romanian Heritage Season, Neglect. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I hope it was engaging. Apologies for the 3-minute silent introduction. We're about 5 minutes over, so we've kind of made up for that. One last question for each of you. If you had one wish, and it doesn't include money or finances, to do with heritage, what would it be? Start with you, Warner.
Because I'm the youngest, or why?
No.
My wish is, I mean, I have a very particular wish, and it's connected with the project that we are doing. And I wish that in 20 years I would go with my child to take a bath in that building that we are trying to save. And perhaps my wish, a bigger wish, is to make like heritage a national priority together.
Nikolai?
Well, I like the idea of a bath in the Herculaneum as well.
Well, join us.
But I think my wish is that the greater Romanian public would wake up and recognize what it is they're losing by being indifferent and disinterested in the country, the content of the country, the buildings, everything, all of the heritage around them, and that they would wake up. That's
And you, Jim?
Well, I always joke with my volunteers saying that my dream is in a few years just to be in a swimming pool in Miami with a cocktail in my hand and knowing that monuments are saved in Romania. Of course, this is impossible because we cannot stay far away from heritage. But I think that what it would be nice that there should be more people as Nikolai, as Juana, and me, and all the others. We are just a few, unfortunately, for now. And I think that our scope is to raise other people who should do their own project, to make leaders, to set up more NGOs, so to have a role not just about in the project but also in education overall. Yes.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you all for joining us. I hope you found it engaging, and hopefully you can join us next week for the talk, which is on exploitation, a study of threats to Romania's wilderness and the efforts to preserve or reverse the destruction to it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.